Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Meconoman at YouTube with another model build review, looking at the Aoshima ROGMAC, which appeared in the source material of Ideon. The model is in 1/600 scale. It's not really standardized as the machines are quite humongous to tiny. It is from the 1980s, a vintage kit, original from the period in its box. This was bought in a large lot from Japan that I sell through my online and event-only hobby shop, The Salt Mines. Older followers will be aware that I thoroughly enjoy mixing it up and building quite old and vintage kits with their newer counterparts today to compare the technology and what people were working with about 30-40 years before today, and this is no exceptions. A lot of the details are hand machined, hand turned, hand sculpted, and can be quite charming in proportion and likeliness to the original box art, as well as a lot of gimmicks to attract you in wanting to build it and finish it. This one being about 3 different aesthetic designs that you can achieve with the large golf ball that sits over it. Inside the box you will find 2 green styrene runners, no polycaps, all articulation, joints and colour separation is direct plastic on plastic. The points are also shallow enough where plastic cement is mandatory for attaching and permanently gluing each component together. None of that has been foresawn. An instruction sheet, mostly black and white, showing the assembly process. 1 colour page showing the colour guide in how you'll be painting it. It will be mostly assumed to be in oil based or enamels and by brush, as well as a free tiny tube of plastic cement. I also assume not quite enough content to actually glue the whole model together, but maybe enough to finish the first few steps in your first session. A lot of these you would struggle to finish in one sitting, as seam lines will have to be addressed with every step you go, as we'll see in this video. Another charm I love about these Japanese vintage kits is the isometric hand-drawn views used for the instruction steps, with thick arrows, easy to the eye, demonstrating where everything goes together. It's not formed in the same computer generated CAD software you see a lot of the modern instructions. Sometimes something as detailed as ships and tanks can be far too cluttered on a single page. Time was drawn to develop these by a draftsman or artist. I also have a special process when constructing these kits, shown multiple times on this channel with other vintage glue together models. Once studying the instructions, I look at the first part that is pre-assembled, such as the bottom of the feet or the hands, and cut out and clean the interlocking part that goes over it. The first part is cemented, seam line filled with putty, extra super glue as support to make sure splitting of the putty doesn't happen later, and allowing a 24-hour period to dry and harden. It is cleaned up the next day, primed for any cracks or splits, re-puttied, sand, and on the second day ready for the next overlapping bit, such as the shins or the forearms, glued together, and the whole process is repeated until the whole limb or the limbs down to the torso is complete. This can actually drag out a build to be a few weeks over to a couple of months long in the process of fairly basic 20-minute sessions day by day. The rewarding set is once it's all glued together, there is no hard to reach parts to fill seam lines or do any cleaning up or mock-up. It's generally polished to the point where you can do a very clean gloss or non-weathered finish. You will also notice there's quite a bit of notations done with a black marker or paint marker, highlighting seam points, injector pin marks or mold sinks all over the model before and after the priming process. The next time I sit down with this project, it reminds me where to glance my attention to immediately in filling, sanding, or repairing any defect before another coat of primer goes over, not to miss anything and waste further time. You'll also notice with these work in progress pictures, this build is not exactly an out of the box job, as there's multiple components to put together and pull apart, such as the large golf ball piece. I've decided to putty the interior and add rare earth magnets to have the whole case encapsulate the robot, showcasing the pre-transformation function on the box art and removing it and displaying it on a diorama base later, as if the golf ball shell was being cast off in some sort of dramatic manner. This gives multiple posing opportunities for the final Photoshop or displaying in competition. Another thing to notice during the build, you'll also notice any gaps or joints also has a black mark from the new cement used by Mr. Hobby. It has an ink installed in colouring the plastic to see if you've spilt or done any marks to it and where it needs to be sanded back or maybe puttied later on. This was also pretty helpful. With the magnet job, that was super glued into place, and the putty that were formed up was Milliput 2-part epoxy. It was formed into place, the magnet stuck in and glued 24 hours and then mirrored on the other side. Once the final sanding and polishing stage was done, the whole project received a coat of Tamiya Grey primer as a base for the paint to etch on and to uniform the colour scheme. Paints selected was mostly Mr. Colour lacquers. The salt chipping method utilising hairspray was also deployed in giving it a bit of a weathered look as per the box art and some more definition to play with. Accompanied with the whole build and paint, a diorama was also constructed to display the golf ball shell when opened and tells the story of the scale and sheer size of the mech a bit more. Looking at the box art, it seems to be a desert landscape. This was done about by purchasing a container from Daiso that had an interesting shaped lid. Container was discarded. The diorama built up with cardboard and milliput, some rocks and sand scudded around, applied by a PVA, and airbrush multiple shades of blue with a bit of a sludge wash and a matte finish coat. Taking a step back to the paint and finish, going with the box art done in a watercolour style and grandiose state, the green was shaded by 3 to 4 colours and further accented with liquid black on top of the salt chips and chipped away at the edges with a knife and whatever flakes were to fall off. Small sections of bubbles and detail were hand painted, as masking would have been a bit too tedious at that state. The best thing about silver and metallics is dry brushing it does build up a streak free finish and it all blends together with a heavy gloss coat on top of that. It can be dulled down later, obviously. A few areas were airbrushed with a heavy pearlescent finish for that reflective look, and a little bit of dry brushing in other areas that were also meant to be silver, but I wanted some green to come through to match the scheme of the box art. Eyes and other bits and pieces were dot and hand painted on. The whole project received a sludge black wash to finish up the look, and multiple coats of matte with a bit of satin dusted on here and there for a patchy weathered finish. The whole process was also painted utilising my battery powered compressor, or the wireless air compressor airbrush combination, done in a plant room at work over night shift when activities was pretty lean, proving that you can do fairly largish and complex projects on 20 minutes worth of charge from session to session. In conclusion, looking over the finish, absolutely happy and keen how this whole diorama came together. Definitely has that vintage appeal and almost campy 80s anime mecha look. The paint scheme was almost ideal to how I envisioned it and definitely wanted to achieve it. The kit itself, which doesn't matter if I recommend it or not, is just currently not available and been off the market for upbeen decades. You can see that the design is just absolutely appealing and collectible from the period, even though it was not very popular at the date of release and how they can sometimes be found today. The amount of work that does need to be invested from a glued together plasticish looking poor toy to this is quite a journey, and something that a beginner modeler would struggle to undertake for the first time and achieve something that you would display. All in all, with a bit of practice here and there on your standard kits, nothing done in this video and the finish here is difficult at all and easily achievable by anyone. Nonetheless, very happy with it and would definitely like to undertake a few more vintage builds in 2020. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. We have all sorts of links and goodies and sources in the description section below, and we'll catch you guys next time. See you later.